All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Monday, everyone. Really excited about the conversation today. I'm really excited because Chris is in the house, and Chris is the founder of CoffeeChat. And so today we're going to have a chat about how he leverages LinkedIn. Chris and I actually met on LinkedIn. I think I saw one of your posts or something that you were doing, and then I reached out. So I sort of used it as an opportunity to reach out based on something I saw on my feed. And one of the things I love talking about is how to leverage LinkedIn in a very efficient and effective manner. And I think so many of us are focused on putting things out, but you can also receive things and make sure that your feed is showing you the right things. So Chris, thank you so much for joining me. Would you maybe just do a quick little introduction, and then we'll get into some of the specific questions I have about how you leverage LinkedIn and how you've built a business, right? Leveraging LinkedIn and connecting with people all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to chat with you, Akua. I always love the energy. I actually was just listening to one of your podcast episodes this morning, so I felt like I've been talking with you all day. But
Yay.
yeah, no, my name is Chris Suzdak. I am from the US, but I've been working across Africa for the past 8 or 9 years and currently based in Mauritius. I am the founder of CoffeeChat, which is a Pan-African coaching platform, and that's how Aku and I came to know each other. She's an incredible coach, and when I came across her profile, when she reached out through LinkedIn, we were able to chat. And at the time, I was actually speaking with hundreds of coaches. We can get more into that, but Akua was kind of the face of coaching for kind of tech companies, and she had like lived and breathed that. So I felt that she could really resonate with a lot of people, and wanted her to play a role in setting up Coffee Chat and establishing a culture of coaching. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I've definitely been using LinkedIn a lot more in the past couple of years, and happy to unpack that a bit today.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for that introduction. And yeah, maybe to begin, let's talk a little bit about how you leverage LinkedIn maybe before starting Coffee Chat. And what was it that led you to believe that leveraging LinkedIn made the most sense to build out the business?
Yeah, so my relationship with LinkedIn started back when there was like a career center info session in college, and they were kind of explaining how to use LinkedIn, and this was back maybe 2010. So it's still a fairly new platform, and I mean, I was ambitious. I was thinking about jobs, putting together applications for different things, and made sense to create a LinkedIn profile. And then for the next couple of years after that, ended up just treating it like my CV, updating things. I didn't have any kind of LinkedIn strategy. I didn't really need to. I was working for companies where I was just hitting the ground, building different teams and operations. I did use it on occasion to post that we were hiring for whatever roles that I was hiring for at the time, and occasionally I would click through to people's LinkedIn profiles from whatever applicant tracking system the company was using, just to double check what they were saying on their CV also matched their LinkedIn. So that was the extent to which I used LinkedIn. And then when it came to my decision to start my own company, um, I had wanted it to be virtual or remote by nature, or by design. And this was before remote work was required. This is early 2019, and so I knew that I would need to really leverage platforms to connect with people, especially because I also made the decision to go be based in Mauritius, which is an island out in the Indian Ocean and not always as connected. It's a bit of a flight over to hubs like Nairobi and Johannesburg and Cape Town and Lagos. So wanted to find a way to be able to network, be able to identify different thought leaders, different CEOs, different coaches who would be vital to helping me kind of address the chicken or egg a problem that happens when you set up a marketplace. And so, yeah, I ended up really diving into the use of LinkedIn once I started Coffee Chat. So that was definitely a before Coffee Chat and after Coffee Chat use of LinkedIn, very different experience. Yeah, I'll stop
Yeah,
there for now.
thank you for taking us through that. I think for me, what I just wanted to help illustrate was how different you can really use the platform. Because I think for so many people, they can definitely see how valuable it can be in terms of looking for that next paid opportunity, but it can also be a great way to find potential clients, collaborators, even mentors. And so, really recognizing that the platform can be used in so many different ways. What were some of the thoughts I think that you had initially around leveraging LinkedIn? Was it like, this is the platform, I'm ready to go? Did you have any stories that you told yourself about leveraging the platform that maybe weren't as helpful when you first started?
Yeah, I think one thing that I had to really grapple with and come to terms with early on was the idea of a cold outreach.
Yeah.
And this was very much hand in hand with me putting together a landing page and trying to do demand testing for my service. So the coffee chat, the intention was to find different coaches and experts, and then pitch different companies to say you can use this platform to have your team access these individuals, and you just pay a central invoice to coffee chat, and we make those connections happen for you. And the business model has evolved a little bit more. It's now focused more on executive coaching and running a kind of manager level coaching programs. So it's much more of a curated marketplace. But in the beginning, I just needed to test the hypothesis and get people who weren't my friends and family to visit a landing page, understand the value proposition, and then take some kind of action to demonstrate that there was some kind of interest. I couldn't charge them anything because I didn't really have a network yet, but I wanted them to take some action, fill in a beta user sign up form, is what I had. And so I kind of had to get over this initial feeling of awkwardness or uh, social discomfort of just connecting with someone new. I think, for example, just reaching out and seeing like a CEO or a consultant or whatever who is maybe a connection, a second degree connection, but I've never met that person. And there's, at least at that time, there was definitely more of a taboo to be like, well, you shouldn't connect with people who you've never met. That's a little bit weird. It still can be a little bit weird,
Yeah.
but what I had to get over it because I needed to test these assumptions out. I needed to reach out to people and say, hey, my name is Chris, founder of Coffee Chat. We're doing X, Y, and Z. I've identified you as someone who, whatever, fits X, Y, and Z. Would you be interested in getting involved? So I bridged the gap by one, telling myself that I had just come off some interesting career experiences. I had worked for some social enterprises that were well known in the region. So anyone who would have seen my request and clicked through to my profile wouldn't think that I was just a random no one. I had a very, clean profile that had been thought out, and I had been in different country director roles. So it wasn't like, I was just a random person. It would cause confusion. So I was able to get over my own self doubt by saying, look, I've done something in the past couple of years, and I'm explaining what I'm doing. So they're going to see why I'm reaching out to them, and the fact that I use this technique of saying I've identified you as a top leader or as a top coach. So it's a little bit less awkward. It's saying, look, I've found you or whatever. I could have said someone else recommended me, but that would have been a bit of a white lie. So I said, look, you've been identified because they were identified by a list I had created. So that was one thing I had to kind of get over quite quickly. And yeah, and sometimes I use that technique a lot more than I was comfortable with. I would go on a a bender and like sent 100 requests over a couple hours. But yeah, it was definitely helpful to learn what worked and what didn't. So I'm glad that I dove into it that way. I don't do that anymore, luckily. But occasionally I do reach out to someone based on them working at a certain company and trying to start a conversation around coaching and what they're seeing in their particular market or their particular company about leadership development in this new era.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. And for those of you who are watching this, feel free to, drop a comment if you have a specific question for Chris based on how he leveraged LinkedIn. I know I have a lot more questions, even just based on what he shared. But if you are watching this live, feel free to do that in the chat and we will get to it. So Chris, from my end, one of the things that you shared that I thought was, just really really helpful was how intentional you were with reaching out to people. Can you share a little bit more about how you leverage LinkedIn to come up with these lead lists and to think about who you wanted to get in touch with?
Yeah. Let's look at this. So I definitely have adjusted and iterated my LinkedIn outreach strategy. I used to keep like a Google sheet of different companies. So there's like two ways that I would do outreach. One would be kind of top down, where I identify different companies that I came across either on my own or through some other source, and then go and search for who were the different decision makers within those companies. Or I would just stumble upon, when you on someone's profile, you see people who are related. So if you're, for example, talking to a leader, a learning and development manager at a certain company, the people who they recommend will often be in similar roles, either at that company or at a similar company. So it definitely went down some rabbit holes using that approach. And I tried as much as possible to organize myself. So keeping track of who I was reaching out to at different companies. Sometimes people would respond saying they were interested. I would mark that in my system. Some people would never respond. I would go and check back, a couple, like 1 or 2 months later. If they were not interested, I would maybe reach out to someone else at the company. I think I ended up investing in LinkedIn Premium. I think was helpful as well. I think that was pretty early on. Once I started realizing that I was hitting certain limits, it just made a lot of sense. I think it's like $500 or $600. I was already making a lot of investments in my company, so LinkedIn Premium was kind of an easy decision to use, and that comes with things like LinkedIn in messages, in mail. They're not that effective, but it definitely guarantees that the person gets an email with your message, so they more likely will see it unless they've really just unplugged from that email or from LinkedIn entirely. Yeah, what else could I riff on here?
No, I think that's incredibly helpful just for people to understand that you can be very intentional with it, and also that you can build a system around it, right? Because for so many of the individuals that I work with, and they have a wide variety of reasons why they want to leverage LinkedIn, but you can do it in a way where it doesn't take over your life, and you can figure out a way to do it where you're also making the most of how you show up in your personality. And maybe this is actually a really great segue to talk about it from that perspective of, and you touched a bit on this, like what you had to let go in terms of the stories. But I know one of the things that we've talked about in the past is that you identify as an introvert. So what are some of the things around that you think could be useful for people listening to this or wanting to use the platform, but say things like, it's not in my personality to do that. I don't do that maybe as an introvert. What can you share with them from that perspective?
Yeah. Well, I'm coming up with a full list of strategies and insights for your program. So I can't give away
Can't give away everything.
everything today, but I can definitely touch on a couple interesting points. as it pertains to um, being an introvert and how that dovetails with LinkedIn and just being a solopreneur in general. I think
Yeah.
one of the key strategies has just been having like a forcing mechanism. So when it comes to posting or resharing content, I have a email newsletter that I do as a part of my coffee chat work, and I've essentially have had an open-ended commitment to sending that out every Monday morning. And so I need to have at least two or three pieces of information available to create or to curate. And so by having this forcing mechanism in place, it kind of forces me to have that on my to-do list and to implement on a weekly basis. So I think that's super helpful, and I've heard great things from other people who are a bit reluctant once someone sat them down and said you need to create a content calendar and really fill that out. And you can automate it to some extent, but just having an actual to-do list or a calendar or a rhythm that you commit to is something that really helps, especially if you're reluctant to do that. So I think that's a first step to create a system, and that forces you to be consistent about it. Because I used to at the beginning I would write different articles, and I would take weeks and weeks, and I have several other people like read the drafts. But now I'm a lot more comfortable just drafting something up in an hour or so, and then posting it to my blog, and then posting it in the newsletter and on LinkedIn and other places. So I think that's just something you can build a muscle for. Um, yeah, another item that I've was kind of developed more recently is this idea of identifying several key themes that you want to rally around. So recently, whatever LinkedIn asked me, "Oh, do you want to turn on creator mode?" And then
Yeah.
it asks you the different hashtags that you want to identify with, and then it posts it on your profile of this person talks about X, Y, and Z, and that I found that to actually be really helpful. I picked coaching, future work, and entrepreneurship, and I felt that those three really captured the essence of what I'm doing with Coffee Chat and some of
I
the
love it.
other initiatives that I'm a part of at the moment. So that was I felt a great way to focus my energy, and so now I naturally find myself making sure that everything that I create and post or reshare or engage with has some connection to one of those three topics. So I think that helps frame why I'm on LinkedIn and how I use LinkedIn. And it's also just a signal to other people that this is what I care about, and they can loop me in on different things as they come through. So, what I would recommend to anyone else is to pick anywhere from 2 to 5. I know I looked at your profile, Aku. I think you have 4 or 5 on there as well. So, I would definitely recommend to anyone to kind of, even if you don't post it, in your profile, your byline, just to intentionally pick 2 to 5 key topics that resonate with you and kind of help guide and focus your engagement on LinkedIn because there's so many different topics. I mean, and I don't limit myself to those three, but it definitely helps, as a constant reminder. I think Coach Huyanzi,
I love that.
you're
Thank you
doing
so
well.
much.
Asking about the sales
Yes.
navigator.
Please go ahead and speak to that. Yeah.
I actually haven't upgraded to Sales Navigator. I have spoken to another entrepreneur. Um, I won't mention their name, but they are also a B2B type of startup, and he's the founder, and he like swears by Sales Navigator. He was trying to pitch me on upgrading because he was such a big fan of that use. So I think it does unlock um, a number of other elements in terms of your ability to search by like I can search by position and by company, but I think this just makes it so much easier for you to um, identify potential leads. Now, and it unlocks their email address, I believe. There's some other alternatives which are more bucketed under data enrichment tools that allow you to it's like a third-party website. There's some that are like one is called Contact Out, one is called Snove, one is called let's see, no, not that one. Forget the name. But yeah, so there's a number of interesting third-party tools that are fairly affordable that allow you to identify people's email addresses. Now, it's kind of a gray area, so you definitely don't want to be, spamming people. But most of the tools just find email addresses that are already public somewhere. So, what a tool
Mhm.
like that would allow you to do, if you're so inclined, is when you're visiting someone's LinkedIn page. Um, that third-party plugin. It's usually a Chrome or a browser extension, or it even just appears on the LinkedIn page, and you click that, and it will search the full internet and find the various email addresses of that person. The same tools also you're allowed to you can go to the company's website and it will also just list out who are all the key people and their webs and their email addresses and their phone numbers if they have those available online. So if it's more from a sales perspective or even other engagement perspective, there are a number of tools outside of LinkedIn that can integrate well with LinkedIn if that's something you're looking for. They're called data enrichment tools. So if you just Google that, there's a whole host of them available.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Chris. Thank you so much for that question. If anyone, once again, has any questions, you are welcome to leave them in the chat. Even if you're watching the replay, please feel free to also leave them in the comments and we'll have Chris come back and respond to them. Chris, thank you so much for sharing that, because one of the things I talk about is how I've actually never paid for LinkedIn. I think once by mistake, I tried premium and they force you to give your credit card. And so I think that by mistake, it charged me once, but that was when I was working full time and only looking at, full-time opportunities. I've actually never paid for LinkedIn as a coach. So it's great to hear your experience and hear what's worked for you. And it sounds like it's something that really resonates with others. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for that question. I honestly would love to hear maybe your thoughts on your favorite LinkedIn tools, right? So you talked a little bit about search. Anything else that you've really enjoyed using? I know from my end, one of the things I've really think that you've done a really good job at actually is building out the CoffeeChat page. Any other tools you think that entrepreneurs should keep in mind or people building a business should keep in mind in terms of leveraging LinkedIn?
No, I mean the company page, you're spot on. That's definitely been a big go-to for me in terms of kind of instantly legitimizing the business, so that people can go there, they can see the different posts, they can see that I'm active, they can
Yeah.
see that there's an increasing number of followers, they can click through to the website. So that's definitely been a helpful tool for me. Um, they allow you to invite people. They give you like 100 credits or whatever a month, so you can invite people within your network that you're already first degree connections with to then follow that page. A little bit of a trick. You'll probably notice that a lot of recruitment agencies or companies that hire a lot will have like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
followers, and that's because when you post a LinkedIn job, like you advertise an actual job and you're paying for it, there's an option where it says um, there's like a checkbox that is auto filled So when they apply via
Oh,
LinkedIn, there's a check box. They can uncheck it, but when you click, apply through via LinkedIn, they just click it. Usually no one unclicks it. So if you're posting jobs regularly and allowing for people, you'll just see the count go up. I remember I posted early on. This is actually when we were connected at Kua, when I was posting for different job. I had to put it as a job opening, but I described it
mhm.
as freelance coaches, and I posted it in a number of cities across Africa to see what type of coaches and experts were out there. They had to apply and then have a 20-minute interview with me. And that's when I came across this, because within one day, I had like 500 initial followers on the
Oh,
company
wow.
page. Then I had posted these jobs, and then like over 2 days, like 2,000 more followers came through. And that's when I realized that feature. So when I see, an HR recruitment firm have 100,000, I'm like, well, yeah, that's because they just post jobs all the time and people apply through their agency through LinkedIn. Yeah.
Wow, that's a neat little trick. Those of you listening to this, maybe something to keep in mind if you are thinking about expanding your page and sort of you're expanding your reach that way. Great, yeah. Any other tools or any other features of LinkedIn that you think? I'd love to hear your perspective on creator mode. Do you feel like it's had an impact on your personal profile? Have you noticed any changes?
No, not really. I don't know what it did besides having this talks about thing. I don't know. Do you know what it does differently?
I mean, I think, from my perspective, not so much. The only thing I try to keep in mind is I try and make sure I use at least one of those hashtags that I sort of talk about in my regular
Mm.
content. And I post about once a day, sometimes twice a day if I have a specific thing I'm looking really to push. But personally, no, I have no idea the impact it's having. Maybe it does. But so far I find, and I would also say sort of how I leverage LinkedIn is also a very organic approach. And so I actually know where most of my connections come from, because a lot of people are coming to my profile through my speaking. And so I'm usually quite aware, or they let me know that that's how we're connected. So I haven't seen any, I guess, random people. I guess that's what I was getting at. My assumption was that with creator mode, random people potentially could see it. But I don't
Oh,
really see that.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. I think I definitely have noticed more people just following me
There you
rather
go.
than
Yeah. That's like
requesting connects. Yeah.
so more, yeah, exactly. So that's the default, right? I think it's a little bit harder to just connect. I think that's what
They
I've heard
make
from
you like
people.
press 2 or 3 buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The other thing that I think could be interesting to touch on, especially as it relates to being an introvert, um, is this idea of when I reach out to people, or when I'm having a one-on-one kind of messaging through coffee chat, or sorry, through LinkedIn, I will offer to have kind of a one-on-one intro call. Um, that's sometimes if it's like a coach who has expressed interest in listing on our platform. That's obviously because we require a 20-minute kind of a screening call.
Hmm.
But even for other people who maybe, there's some partnership potential, or they're just keen on exchanging insights, maybe they're in a similar industry, or if it is more of a sales lead where it's someone at a company who could either be the buyer, or an influencer, or sales like ambassador. So I'm able to leverage Calendly just to make it super simple to say, hey, this is a great conversation. Would it make sense for us to have an intro call? And I just pop in the link for a 20-minute call and mention, if you're ready, or when you're ready, here's my thing. We can always chat. And then it leaves it in their court to have a call. And then you also kind of are able to follow up more easily once they've signed up. You'll have their email address. You can always email them too. And what I like about one-on-one conversations, I've literally had I should actually go and count, but I'm guessing that I've had probably at this point easily um, 1,500 one-on-one calls when it comes to coffee chat. And you could make the argument that maybe I should have just had, 20 webinars with 50 people in it each. But I think the practice of having a one-on-one call, especially when it's limited to, 20 minutes, 15, 20
Mhm.
minutes, that you can have a meaningful connection with that person. You're able to talk on a couple different topics. Um, I'm also able to continually refine
Yes.
my own pitch about myself and the company. And obviously, I can customize it specifically to that person, having looked at their LinkedIn and knowing why we were chatting. And I prefer one-on-one conversations. So I've been able to say, look, this is worth my time having one-on-one conversations with people rather than in group settings, and it's worked for me. And people are definitely willing to chat more in post 2020. I think that definitely helped. I think a lot of people before 2020 maybe didn't understand why I wasn't in their city and why they're talking to me. And so after 2020, it became a lot easier to have calls with people like in Kigali or Lagos or um, Nairobi when I'm over here in Mauritius. So that's been huge in terms of just being able to be comfortable and ready to have one-on-one calls. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think this also speaks to this idea that there's so many different ways to really approach leveraging any platform or even building your business. And so it's really important for you to really reflect on what makes sense for you, maybe to start off with in terms of your preferences, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone a little bit. But I think to your point, and one of the reasons why I think Coffee Chat was able to iterate so quickly is because you have those touch points. And I would actually make the argument that at this time when you were starting, I think it would have been very difficult to try to get that many African-based coaches and African coaches onto something like a webinar or onto something that was group related and get them to actually speak very candidly and very directly about what they were seeing and where their business was also at. Because I do think that's a very personal thing. And as someone who's been in this coaching industry now for about 3, almost 4 years, not everyone speaks very candidly or is very open about their business. And not everyone is actually running a coaching business, right? For a lot of people, it's also potentially a side hustle, but that's not something that they want to necessarily share, especially in a more public forum. So from my perspective, it seems like that was the perfect way really to start off and to continue to build upon. And I think that's why so many people are so excited to work with you and so excited to work with Coffee Chat.
Yeah, no, we definitely have done some of those webinars. You and I collaborated on
Yeah.
that, and it was definitely interesting because most of the time I had spoken with all the participants one on one beforehand, so I did have a sense of what they might be thinking on certain topics, especially since we structured a lot of those conversations with open ended discussion questions. So you're
Mhm.
definitely right about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we wrap up here, because I feel like I've taken up a lot of your time already, any last words, any thoughts for anyone looking to leverage LinkedIn for their business, especially if they work for themselves? Any last words for someone who's maybe thinking to themselves, I'm a bit reluctant and maybe this isn't the right place for me?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn might not be the best place for you.
Yes. Yeah.
So it has to be a decision that is aligned with um, your own personal preference, but also your customer or your target audience that you're trying to either be influenced by or to influence. It goes both ways. So if you're doing a B2B business, it's definitely recommended. I think I've been so comfortable. I mean, I've posted on other platforms, but for the most part, LinkedIn has been kind of where I spend my time and put extra effort into just because it's a natural um, natural kind of topic to bring up. Leadership development, coaching, growth mindset. Those types of topics are kind of, in my opinion, what LinkedIn is all about: career growth, thought leadership when it comes to the professional side of things. And so, me talking about different types of coaching or highlighting clients that we've worked with in their leadership journeys, I think is fits right, within the scope of LinkedIn and what most people are showing up to see, to kind of be motivated to think about how to continually upgrade and up level themselves. So that's been natural for me. But if you're doing some other business that doesn't easily fit within the narrative, it might be worth rethinking. Maybe a different platform is where you can get a better return on investment of your time and effort. Um, of course, there's automated tools that allow you to post across a range of platforms, but still some effort in terms of customizing each type of content for each platform. And yeah, just think about who is in your network, who you can add to your network to really make the most of your platform. But I've definitely been happy with LinkedIn. It makes a lot of sense for me, and I definitely don't know where I would be without it, because otherwise, to have connected with so many different people and chatted with them, and that leading to phone calls, I probably would have had to be on the road at different conferences all year long to achieve that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris, for your thoughts, for your insight, and for sharing your experience. For those of you who are joining us, once again, if you're watching the replay, please feel free to leave a question or comment in the comments. We'll get back to them and make sure that Chris, has a look at them and provides his feedback and his thoughts. If you'd love to learn a little bit more about CoffeeChat, you can check out the description or the comments. I think I put the link there. And just Chris, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the bonus you're creating for my program. And I think it's just going to be such a great way to help people really get outside their comfort zone and really leverage, I think, LinkedIn in a very systematic way that makes sense for them. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and looking forward to your program.